Hey everybody, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, it is part 3 of the Barberry Bush. It's a little windier outside today and a little bit cooler outside today, so that wind chill factor and the noise with the microphone, which I noticed from the last couple episodes, you know, it gets a little hard to listen to after a while. So we are in the comfort of the plant room, 71 degrees, and we are tackling tree number 3. So I do believe I showed a picture of the before tree from my dad's side yard. So this is one of the big ones. I'll show that image again. This has got a really gnarly, huge root. It's just got a little bit of everything. So I'll be very curious what the root structure looks on this guy. Again, it's been in here in this pot for about a year, just with a lot of pumice. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to clean this thing out. And I'm sure I'm going to be able to dump most of it right off into this bin and we'll be able to get started. Trying to keep most of it inside the bin. And there it comes. Here comes the structure, right? There. When I lost a root in the transfer. All right. Ugh. We don't want to lose a lot of roots. We want to maintain as many as possible. The first one I transplanted had some decent roots. The second one had some slim pickings, but I can see some roots right here on the camera side. Look at all those fine roots, so that's good. So we got some fine roots established. Now we're just going to kind of break this apart. We're going to cut back some of the bigger roots that are typically just dead and big old stumps really. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to see if we can get this into a pot as well. So a couple of things about the barberry and why I like them so much. It was back about 3-4 years ago at one of the Minnesota Bonsai Society Mother's Day, the annual Mother's Day show at Como Park Conservatory. So if you're ever in Minnesota and you want to go see some fine trees, go to the Como Park Conservatory. After you visit the Chinese garden, or the Japanese garden rather, you can go in and you can go look at all the bonsai on display in the bonsai garden. At the conservatory. So some great trees there. It's what inspires a lot of people in our community and in the metropolitan area here in Minnesota. And then they seek out some assistance on how to really learn about that craft. And gosh, how do I do that? And that's where Minnesota Bonsai Society comes in. So I'm still an active member in the Minnesota Bonsai Society. This year I'm the coordinator of the workshops. We have 3 novice workshops every year where we introduce the bonsai techniques and repot a juniper. In the month of May, we repot the tropical trees. In the summertime, in July, and then in September, we do a mix of both. It's a little bit late in September to do a tropical, but Minnesota, they're going to keep all those trees indoors, so they'll have a chance to heal up pretty well. So we kind of split that second one and give people an option. And it's a nice introduction to bonsai as an art form, as a hobby, as something people get really excited about and want to learn more about. So it was at that Mother's Day annual show that one of our members brought his barberry tree. Now I never got to talk to that member. He wasn't there that day. His tree was on display and it was a beautiful single trunk, kind of a broom style, if I remember correctly, kind of a broom style barberry. So these are bushes, right? So people are getting barberry bushes and they have thorns on them, as I mentioned in the earlier shows here. So they're very kind of tricky when you have young kids fetching those balls that they're playing with and they go in the garden. They're hard for us to handle because they have all the prickly thorn on them. But they really make a very neat bonsai because they have some really great leaf color on some of the varieties. They have small leaves. So you can get a nice looking bonsai tree out of a barberry. Now, it's a bush, and as you can see with this monster right here, this is a pretty wide base. I'm starting to get some of this soil down here, and I'm seeing some roots that go down pretty deep. So this is going to, again, need me to do some major chopping of the bottom roots, which I think I can do because all of my feeder roots are up here higher, which is a good sign. I don't want them to be all on the bottom, because then I would lose all of those finer roots when I make it smaller. But as you can see, this is going to be a clump style tree without question, unless I cut this thing almost in half and lose a big chunk of it. There's been a lot of cutbacks in here. So we got big one right there, big one right here. These big ones were cut back off. This is cut right here and here, here and here, some old. And again, these barberries, if you didn't catch the previous two, part 1, part 2, they grow back, they can grow back really profusely. They just go crazy with growth. And they shoot up a ton of suckers, which makes it challenging to make it a tree. So you have to watch these carefully. You have to watch them and monitor them and do your work throughout the year. Kind of like a weeping willow that you're trimming 3-4 times a year because it grows so much. If you want to keep any resemblance of a shape, you go ahead and do that. Or if you want to go ahead and get it thicker, get more girth to your tree or a few branches, you just let it grow wild. But now this thing is probably 12 inches from right here to down here, 10 to 12 inches. And this is all some pretty hard roots down here that I'm gonna have to be seeing if I can chop off. I might have to actually go get a saw. And what I'm gonna have to decide is if it goes right back into the same pot. So what I'm really doing is getting rid of all this dirt, hopefully today, most of it. We're bare rooting this thing as much as I can. We wanna get rid of the dirt and get this thing into some good bonsai soil, which again for me is 3 parts. We got 1 part akadama, 1 part pumice, 1 part lava rock. This particular tree, because it's in the early stages, I typically will use some recycled soil, and I might not put the brand new stuff in until I see it's going to maybe do some good things. And really the recycled soil that I'm using, in this case, some of the recycled soil I'll be using in this one today is recycled pumice that I had on the other trees that I've already sifted a little bit, and we'll make sure that we can get some of that soil recycled a little bit. It's got less dirt in there, maybe a few remnants of some dirt. So as I clean this thing out, it's just kind of a mess. It's gnarly and goes all over the place. So we have to find where we can get some of this base out of here. Now, down lower, just like with any nursery stock, when you start cut down here, when you start going down in a nursery pot, you don't know what you're going to find. And look at this really big root down here. Look, it looks like there was a branch right down here. So these bulges are just from all of the suckers coming out. Now, would I be able to get rid of that bulge so I don't see a lot of reverse taper? Time will tell. This also goes right through to the other side. So there's a big gully right here. That's 1 big root. Now, if I want to expose all of this root right here, well, that means all of this growth right up here is going to be lost. And I don't know if I lose all of that, I don't have enough to support me in other parts of the tree. So I'm probably not going to be able to expose that root at least this year right now, right? Maybe a couple years from now. So right here I see a branch that's already cuttable for me. A root rather. This guy right here is just growing over to the left here, a really weird shape. We'll cut that right off and we're good to go with that one. And some of these just have some little sections here that just aren't growing any fine roots. We can cut those off and we'll see what we find as we continue to dig. So this one was in the ground probably the longest. I had mentioned in the previous 2 shows that some of these barberries probably in the ground for 20-30 years, maybe longer. Now my parents haven't been in this house for a long time, but these were definitely established trees, bushes in this person's yard before my parents even got there. There's some really cool roots down here. This guy right here, it's coming down and then it curves around. So we got some really interesting structure here that we're going to be filling out with bonsai soil And then we're going to have to be doing some root work over time. Now we can bare root some trees more than others. A lot of deciduous, speedy growers like the Japanese maple. A lot of maple varieties you can do a lot of bare rooting, and you can do that time and time again, and the tree's going to be fine. Other varieties you have to be more careful of. This barberry, again, they grow so fast that I'm hoping that the reproduction of more roots here as we get it into bonsai soil is just going to continue to get better and better. But we have just this big blob of a trunk on the bottom here. It's almost like a reverse iceberg, where you got that 20% up top here that would be shown, and then all this would be down below. But I've got all this nice roots right here. Right here, look at all these roots that came off in this repotting. Those survived and grew. So that's going to make this interesting to repot. So what I'm going to have to decide is if I put it back in the deep pot it was in, because even my deep pot that I showcased in the last show is nowhere near deep enough to cover those roots. So we might have to utilize some of our deeper pots. I have a pot here with the other tree. Might have to put it in something like that, which is going to require a whole lot of soil, or we can manipulate it. We can put some other materials in the pot to make it have a little bit less soil. Kind of put some. Sometimes they put slats of wood in our grow boxes, a kitty corner on the corners of a wood box, and so that way you can have a little bit less soil. So right now, I got most of the dirt off of there. We're going to leave this right down here so I can capture as much dirt as possible. And now we have to just kind of see what's going to happen with this thing. I got some old pieces here that we can certainly try to start getting rid of. Got this old chunk right here. I don't know if this knob cutter will be strong enough. Oh, sure it is. Barberries are pretty easy to cut into. They're a pretty soft wood. It's good for what I'm doing right now, but you have to be super careful that you don't damage branches as well. You don't want to damage the branches that you want to keep. So as you clean up here, soft wood, you got the yellow inside, that mustardy yellow, and this will all smooth out and heal over pretty rapidly, because just the cuts I made last year are super smoothed over. You heard a little snap there. That was this dead branch in here. So we got some dead stuff in here. We get all these big nubs in here that I didn't completely clean out last year. But again, with the softness of this variety, I can come in here. Now this year, as I make this, and try to get rid of some of this dead wood. Right there. I could get rid of that and we could lower it down a little bit in the pot. So the next consideration is, if I'm going to put it back into this pot, I'm going to have to put something on the bottom so the roots go flat. So this is a super steep pot. I don't think I'll go back in this one, it's a little bit too much. But if we put something flat at the bottom of our tree, and we have some room down here, we can make sure that most of the akadama stays from here on up, and so we don't have akadama all the way to the bottom, so it has a better balance of that moisture. We don't want to have it staying wet for too long and then overwater it, so we're going to maybe want to put something like that to make it shallower. So I'm going to go look at my pots outside, knowing that both of these big pots, but not even close to the depth I need. I would love it if this one was deeper. This one was a little bit deeper. We could have fun with this pot and make some trims and see how that could look in time. But it's just too shallow. You can see all the roots sticking up there. We need something deeper. We're not going to risk cutting too much off for fear we're not going to get enough growth back. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to find a deeper pot. So I'm going to find a deeper pot and we'll see what we got. So going out to the garage, my first thought was this really nice thick colander style pot. It's got all the drain holes in the top and the bottom. It's still a little bit too shallow. And I've got this pot that's a little bit smaller than the one I showed you before. This will fit it pretty nice. And I can get the soil up to here as a little bit of a mound and some sphagnum moss and protect that, tuck it down. However, I still haven't cut down that bottom section yet, so we're going to make that a little bit smaller first and then make our decision. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in the saw now and see if we can get this a little bit smaller. There's the old tap root, what's left of it. There is some fine root at the bottom there, but not too much to worry about. Now we have that little, looks like the tip of a spark plug. We're going to cut that now. Got another one that's down here, don't need. Now my fear is getting rid of this guy because of all these roots down here. Right here. But if we angle it in the pot this way, we give it a little bit of an angle, we might be able to get all those roots down in there. And even up here, yeah, we can mound this up here. We can mound this up here and get these roots down there and continue to go down for the time being. All right, so let me cut off a few more things that we know we for sure don't need, and I think we're gonna put some soil in that pot and get her going. Always good to have some sheetrock tape available. Cover up those 4 holes. I'm not even going to put any wires on there because the soil will just sit in there really quite nice. And again, I'm not going to wire this in, so I'm strictly going to start with my rough soil, which is my big mix. And then I'm going to use my recycled soil. Put some on top. And now we're going to see how this is going to sit in here. We want to go all the way down to the bottom of those big rocks. So these are the tall roots over here that I want to make sure get tucked in enough. Seems pretty sturdy in there right now. So I'm going to go ahead and scoop up some for this flip side here. And I wanted to not sink as far on this side. So there we go. So that raised it up just a little bit. I do have this root right here that's just way too high. We're going to be okay taking that one off. There. So when planting a tree in this situation, I got some feeder roots that are a little high over here, but we're going to tuck those down, bury them with some soil, and then some sphagnum moss on top of that. There we go. So we have a lip all the way around this pot, so the water will go in the pot, not out of the pot. And we'll put some sphagnum moss in here as well. All right. So we've got lots of airy pockets in here, so I'm going to go ahead and wobble some of that soil down. And this repot is not for style. This repot is because we had it only in the original soil and some pumice. Now we have a mixture of some akadama, lava rock, and pumice at the bottom in a coarser value. And then I have the medium level, mostly pumice here in the secondary level of soil. So I'm going to have to make sure that I keep this very moist. The water is going to go through these layers pretty quickly. So I have to make sure I'm watering very well throughout the summer. This will go into the cold frame for the rest of the next, at least 4 weeks, I would imagine, because we don't want these little fine roots to be damaged anymore. We are supposed to get a little dusting of snow tomorrow. So we're going to have a little bit colder temps, a little bit of snow, probably really the wet variety that's just going to melt within a day because we have 50s forecast for next weekend already. So I just want to make sure that all those areas down deep in there, we had a lot of holes in the bottom. There we go. So right here, I found a hole right there. Look at that, all the rocks falling in there. So much rocks fell in there. I'm going to put some more right there. That's why we have to do this chopstick. There was air down in there that was way too big. All of these rocks are going in there, into that hole. So now there will be a nice balance of water and oxygen down underneath this root system that's growing quite at a slant now. I've kind of made this a slant style planting from this clump style barberry. Okay, we can add more soil. We can add more soil and then we'll get the sphagnum moss in here. We'll give this a good watering and we'll be good to go. We want to make sure all those air pockets are taken care of on this planting because we knew there was a couple of big roots down in there that had nothing in between them. So we have to make sure all these rocks are covering those holes. There we go. We got some more right there. Look at all that going down. So the water's going to help settle this movement here, getting all these rocks down there. There was a hole right there. Look at that. All right. Get some more soil over there. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a bit of a watering. And I need to make sure I have a little bin to capture the extra water in, or it's going to be a mess. We'll put it in the one it was in before. Right here. We'll make a muddy mess right like that. Here we go. Let's get some water and take care of this guy. Here we go, making a nice mess in there, huh? Okay, let's put some sphagnum moss on there. And the sphagnum moss is certainly going to help with this pumice on top. It's going to help retain some of that moisture. We don't want these to completely dry out with mainly pumice on that top layer. We have the akadama, pumice and lava rock on the lower layer. And most about the first half is that. And then we have more of the pumice recycled on the top. Alright. So we'll give this a nice little spray to settle some of that sphagnum moss. So as you can see, after I put the sphagnum moss on here, we still have a hefty mound, but the soil line, remember, there is a little ridge between the soil line and the edge of the pot, so the water will soak in and get all the plant wet. Okay, the sphagnum moss seems to be hugging good enough to come back and give it another shower. Now I'd love the weather to be above freezing for the rest of spring, because we have a little system coming through tomorrow where it's going to rain and snow or mix. It's going to probably start as snow, turn into rain, and we'll have a good amount of snow to cover all the outside trees, give it some natural water. But we don't want these roots to be in trouble. So we want to make sure these roots are going to now stay at that 40-degree range in the cold frame. We'll put this in the cabin cold frame with the other ones, and we'll hope for the best, as we always do. So, got some water going through there. We have a multi-clump. Got a really big chunk of dead wood in the middle here. So there's our tree. Multi-clump, who knows what will come off in future repots. I can't see where some of these branches are even coming from now because they're buried. That sphagnum moss is really sucking up this water. This was a whole half gallon of water here that's now in this pot, because I'm just about at the end right there. So I'm going to see if there's any for sure branches that I can cut right now. And if there are some branches I can cut for sure right now, I certainly can do that. This clump right here is a nice clump of 4 trunks. Maybe I get rid of this big thick one and let these 3 grow. There already was one chopped right here behind it, so maybe if I cut that thick one out, we will certainly have more room to move. So if I go in and cut that one out, and now I have a little bit of a clump in there. See if I can reach in there and now clean it out a little bit more. Got all these branches in my way. And some thorns, you know, felt that one. So we got these 3 branch trees now instead of that one big one coming up. So we'll see how those grow and are supported. You'll notice this one right here is leaning on this big old stump. This big old stump can go completely away someday. We'll have to get a saw in there and try to saw that away. Maybe this branch comes out and I just saw it all, so I just focus on these 3. Then we've got this part here with some major trunks coming out here, 1, 2, 3. Got a couple of these branches coming on the inside. I'm going to take that inside one out. I'm going to take this one inside and just cut it shorter for right now. Keep some more live tissue there. And this might be hard to see with the camera angle, but there's an old branch that was cut off last year right there. But again, can't get in there with a tool to really get that out right now. So we'll have to wait on that one a little bit. That might be where a little tiny Dremel I can get in there might be able to nut and get that thing off. We have these 2 growing right next to each other. Got this smaller, this older. They're growing real close to each other. I could take both of them out, so I could choose one or the other. Right now, if it's the back of the composition, it just fills it up back there. If this becomes the front someday and these trees grow up for more of a forest look, or I cut all these off right here, then we have our main tree right here. I cut all this off. That wouldn't be such a bad idea right now, is cutting all that off. But we're not going to cut this thing that drastically today because I want to make sure that this thing stays alive. We have two branches coming from the same spot. I'll cut that off. This is competing with that and already broken off, so I'll cut that there. I'm going to make this one even shorter so this back one can grow. This one's kind of growing straight up and from another junction. I'll cut that off. I'm going to cut that one off. These are all competing for that space right there. So just for right now, I'll cut that off. There, so it's not pretty back here, it's kind of clunky, but we'll see if I get some back budding back here. We got this guy growing in the middle, right here. This guy's growing in the middle. I'm just gonna go ahead and cut him off right now. Clean up the back side of this. And I don't think I'm going to do a whole lot more. This one's growing inside right here. Oh, I cut that one out already, right? Yeah, let's just get rid of that. That just doesn't make sense. So there we have a little forest. We have a forest of barberries, and we'll see what happens here. Oh, good, that broke right off. Lovely. See, once they die, they're easy to cut off in a lot of different ways. These barberries, from my experience. So we have a decent mound of sphagnum moss, but we still have a little bit of a lip before that soil starts, so that water is going to hug that lip line and water just fine. We'll have to make sure we're really making sure we water this thing really good so that moisture stays in there. And I don't want to mess with any more branches right now. The only one I'm contemplating is these two right here. They're just so close to each other and they're competing right here. So even if it's from the back, you know, this one's pretty, it's ramified, this one's older. We have this kind of natural lean right here growing this way, so who knows, we have a little circle of hollowness right in here. Maybe a couple of suckers will grow right up here this summer and fill this out real nicely. For how fast these grow, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. The tools are down. The tools are down. Oop, broke that branch. Ouch, thorns. Yep, be careful, thorns. Who knows what will happen to this tree? This will be the fun. This will be a great experiment. Of course, I'll have all these on a playlist. You'll be able to watch all these. We'll follow the progress this year and from years to come. We'll be working on this for a long time. Fun project that has just a really kind of gnarly bottom base, like this was just this massive. You see a lot of lilac bushes. When I was younger, we would play in here. We would go and play in these lilac groves, if you will, and they'd be these big tall branches and all the leaves would kind of protect us and we'd have this little hollow area in here. It kind of reminds me of that. So a fun place for a little kid to play if this was a big tree structure in nature. So we'll let this go and we will come back to it. We will come back to it throughout the year and see how things are growing. All right. 3 down, 1 to go. That'll be on the next episode. Thanks everyone for watching. Click like, make sure you subscribe, and take care of yourselves, take care of your bonsais, and we will see you on the next one. Bye-bye everyone.